What's up, y'all? I want to come back this week and continue our series for the month of February called Black Don't Crack. You know that this is Black History Month, the month that has been reserved in American culture to celebrate all things Black. We know that Black History Month isn't just 1 month out of the year, but it is all months, all days of the year, because American history is Black history. The scripture that I'm using for the next couple weeks is 2 Corinthians 4, 8 and 9. It says, we are hard pressed on every side, but not crushed, perplexed, but not in despair, persecuted, but not abandoned, struck down, but not destroyed. Last week, we dealt with the first part of that scripture. We are hard pressed on every side, but not crushed. Today, we want to deal with perplexed, but not in despair. This whole week, I have had my head in a book. The book that I've been reading this whole week has been the book by Henry Louis Gates called The Black Church. This is our story. This is our song. There was also a PBS documentary 4 parts that played this past week as well. I watched the documentary, I read the book. If you haven't watched the documentary, you can go to pbs.com and watch the documentary. I recommend that everybody go and watch that documentary. It's an amazing and fascinating look at the power of the Black church. As I was looking at that this week, it helped me to feel the life of this scripture even more. We are hard pressed on every side, but not crushed, perplexed, but not in despair, persecuted, but not abandoned, struck down, but not destroyed. That is the message and the history and the life of the Black church, of Black people in this country. Today, I want to talk about that being perplexed, but not in despair. Perplexed means to be completely baffled and very puzzled. As I watched that documentary, as I look at the plight of our ancestors, as I look at what happened during slavery and the transatlantic slave trade, what happened during black codes and the 13th Amendment that put African Americans in slavery through the penal system. When I look at what happened during the civil rights movement and Jim Crow and Jane Crow, when I look at what is still taking place this past summer, Black people and white people and brown people and Asian people, every people from all around the world got together and marched because of the brutality of Black and brown people. It's still happening until this day. When I look at that, it sometimes leaves me completely baffled and very puzzled. Leaves me baffled and very puzzled about why don't people like our skin? Why do people try to make us feel like we are inferior to them? Why has there been such a huge campaign to oppress Black people in this country? It leaves me very perplexed. It leaves me completely baffled. I'm baffled over the fact that God would allow us, beautiful and Black and bold and strong people, to endure and experience 400 years of this type of brutality and slavery in this country. I'm perplexed. I don't understand it. I don't get it. I don't understand why I, as a Black parent, have to have that conversation with my sons and daughters about when they get pulled over, what they need to do. Our son Henry is learning to drive right now, and every time he gets in a car, he takes his wallet out and put it up on the dash. That's not something I taught him, but somewhere along the way, he realized as a Black boy driving, he don't need to reach for anything. Why do I have to be aware of that? Why does my son have to live in that reality? It perplexes me. I don't understand it. I don't get it. why we have been baptized by fire and hatred and bigotry while we've been in this country. I'm perplexed. This scripture says that although we are perplexed, although we may not get it, although we may not understand it, we're not in despair. We're perplexed, but we're not in despair. Don't mistake us not getting it and not understanding it as despair. Despair means that we have completely lost our hope. No, we didn't lose our hope, even though we are in despair, even though we had to experience slavery and Jim and Jane Crow, and even though we've gone through the civil rights movement, and even though we're still experiencing police brutality with Breonna Taylor and what happened to George Floyd, although we're still going through that, we ain't lost our hope. No, we still have our hope. We still believe that a better day is coming. We still believe that we shall overcome. We still hear freedom bells ringing over our head. We still believe that God is on our side, the side of the oppressed. We have not given up hope. That reminds me of my grandfather, who was born in 1916, raised me, would say to me, boy, don't ever lose your hope. He says, when you lose that, you're done. Hold on to your hope. We still have hope. We have hope in a God of our weary years and a God of our silent tears. We still have hope. This reminds me of our former president, two formers ago. President Barack Obama wrote a book called The Audacity of Hope. President Barack Obama was inspired to write that book, The Audacity of Hope, from a sermon he heard by his pastor, Pastor Jeremiah Wright, who spoke a sermon called The Audacity of Hope. Pastor Jeremiah Wright, who is a great preacher, was inspired to preach that sermon from a picture he saw called by George Frederick Watts called Hope. George Frederick Watts painted this picture in 1886. You should look it up. George Frederick Watts. It's called Hope. And the picture is of a woman who's sitting on top of a world. The world is clearly in turmoil. There's clearly trials and tribulations taking place on the earth. And she's sitting on top of this earth with her head hung down. This woman is clearly in a devastated, downtrodden state. She has a harp, and all the strings of that harp are gone except one string. She has one more string. It doesn't seem like George Frederick Watts would call that painting hope. Seems like that painting would be called despair. I think it's called hope because although she's on top of a world that is being destroyed, although she's downtrodden, although all the strings of her harp is gone, she still has one more string. And that's what hope is. Even though it may look bad, you take that one more string and you play that one string with all of your might, with all of your hope, and that one string can make some beautiful music. That's what hope is. Hope is that although you are in seasons of despair, although you're in moments where you're downtrodden, although you are perplexed and you don't get it, you don't understand what's happening, you still have hope that with what you have left, even though it may not be a lot, with what you have left, you still are able to play the beautiful music that God created you to play. You're still able to rise up and go to school and go to college and graduate and get a degree. You're still able to go out and make history and become the first something in your family. You're still able to go do amazing and great things. You may not get it. You may be perplexed, but we're not in despair. So I want to say to y'all what my grandfather said to me: hold on to your hope. Don't lose that. You may be perplexed, Don't ever get in despair. Peace.